but it shows the extinction rates of, and it's on a logarithmic scale, so each point on the scale is a factor of 10. And it shows how the historical past, shown in purple, indicates the extinction rates of species. Moving to the green, that's the recent past, that's the extinction rate of species. As you can see, something around 100 times higher than we've observed in the fossil record in the distant past. And the future, calculated from a whole series of trends: habitat changes, urbanization, climate change, expansion of human population, implies a further pattern of extinctions that are actually going out there. And if we don't address these issues, and it's important that we have both government and non-government organisations which address these issues, we are going to preside over something that will be terrible. Next slide. So I've supplemented 5 key questions around a perfect storm. The first one, the focus of our discussions this afternoon, is can we feed 9 billion people healthily, sustainably, and very importantly, equitably? Can we cope with the future demands for water? And can we provide enough energy to supply this growing and more wealthy population? And can we mitigate and do all that, or we mitigate and adapt to climate change? But actually, I would argue, almost as equally important is can we do all this in the context of redressing the decline of biodiversity? So I see those as 5 absolutely critical questions that we need to go and address as we move into the 21st century. Let's focus back on land and agriculture. The challenge for agriculture, give or take, is 50% more production, less land, less water, less use of energy, less use of fertilizer, and less use of pesticide. And we need to do that by 2030 while increasing greenhouse gas emissions. That is a phenomenal challenge. Why do I choose 2030? Well, there's a personal reason in the sense that in 2050, which is where most of these projections are done, I'll be 105. I can't take 2050 that seriously. I lose interest. I know I should worry about my grandchildren and my grandchildren's children, but 2050, I'll be 105. So I'm focusing on 2030. It's only 2 decades away. 2030 is, I hope to be, you can work by subtraction, I'll be 85, and hopefully enjoying a full and ample life. But 2030, 21 years away, these are the challenges for 2030. Are we going to do that in the same old way? The same old legislation, the same old agricultural practices, the same old arguments about how we deal with energy, how we look at the use of land? I don't think so. We have got to look at radical change. Let's think about it. I'm a scientist. I'm a chief scientific advisor in the United Kingdom government. Wonderfully pompous title, but I'm obviously focused on the way where science and technology can help. Next slide, please. Let's think about it. The first thing is, what do we know? One of the things that's happened, and has been enormously progression over the last few decade or so, is our ability to understand the genetic basis of plants. We also understand almost just as well an increasing rate of genetic basis of animal production, but also the humans and human disease. And I'm focusing on plants. It is possible now to sequence and understand the genetic composition of plants in a way that 10 years ago was unimaginable. As people know, the wheat genome is something of the order of 5 times more complicated than the human genome. And other cereals less so, but this is a big challenge. But it is possible to understand the genomics of plants, to do that, to use that understanding of the genomics to actually guide conventional, marker-related breeding to opposing problems, because we have problems. We have got to recognise that we are going to have to grow agricultural products on harsher environments, whether drought-ridden or saline-ridden. We need to recognise that climate change is going to generate new problems of infectious diseases, and we have already seen that in Uganda 99's rust on wheat is already spreading significantly throughout the world with no ability to deal with it.
recent Society publication on the way in which biotechnology can contribute to solving or helping, not just actually this food security problem, but other areas, because we may need to be thinking about how we can use land to produce crops which enable us to use low carbon fuel. I'm not ruling that out. I think a number of things are possible, particularly with the developments in our understanding of second generation biofuels. But we can think about this, and that is one way I believe science can help. Now, I believe it's a terrible mistake that genomics is focused entirely on the debate about genetically modified organisms. But I think that debate needs to be continuing, because I think there's issues. Could I have the next slide, please? This shows the green, and Peter Malchuk sitting on the table. Peter, using green to describe countries that actually have genetically modified organisms was not meant to be particularly aggressive or provocative. That was just the way the colours came out. But the green shows the parts of the world which actually use and grow genetically modified organisms. The graph line shows the increase in the amount of land that is being used for genetically modified organisms since about 96 when they first came in. One going up inexorably. I think it's a reasonable question to pose and saying, do we want a priori to cut out this technology? Europe, as consumers, have strong views on this, not all, but there is a strong view in Europe against using genetically modified organisms. I think it's perfectly reasonable to pose questions about it, to pose questions about human health, to pose questions about environmental safety, and indeed the requirements for it. But I would argue, and I'm an advisor, I wouldn't seek to go into the policy and political process. My advice is that it would be unwise to rule out the use of genetically modified organisms in the future to address significant problems that I believe will be there over the next 20 or 30 years. I cannot imagine why one would seek to do that. And Europe is different. The rest of the world is already using this. So I pose it as a question. I pose it as a question about how this can be addressed. That is for the political process, but I think the science advice is fairly clear that there is potential. And of course there has to be some ability to check. We need to have and address appropriate questions about human health and about environmental safety. But we need to, I do not think it is wise to a priori forbid the use of genetically modified organisms to help us solve some of the very difficult problems we're going to need to face over the next 20 or 30 years. Let's now focus on one other area. One of what you might call low-hanging fruit, if it wasn't a terrible pun, is the actual losses due to pests and diseases. This graph shows the current losses pre-harvest due to pests and diseases worldwide. Give or take, something between 25 and 35% of all of them, a number of major crops, are lost due to pest and disease prior to harvest. And this is subsequent, something of the order, this is worldwide, 20 or 25% of crops are lost during storage. The difference in storage is illustrated between summer in West Africa and summer in Italy. So you can see investment can repeat it. But the ability to deal with pests and diseases is enormously important in order to address that food security. We're losing about 40% of the world's food crop due to pests and diseases, both pre-harvest and post-harvest. Can we not address that problem? Because if we could do that, we would have immediately a way of increasing substantially the productivity of land, so we don't have to trespass and move into land which can produce more carbon emissions or undermine biodiversity. So the ability to deal with pests and diseases is important.